Hi, I'm Roger Belcher. Today's SAMA's video will cover creating a budget and reimbursement with advance and with salaries pursuant to the KHA memo titled COVID-19 Recovery Invoicing Guidelines for Summer Camp 2020. This process reflects a summer camp in which the original contract does plan to show employee salaries. If your contract does not reflect a need to show salaries, I have another video to cover how that's done. In the following scenario, our example will be for a summer camp with a $60,000 award and a $30,000 advance. Because units of service will not be applicable for financial purposes under the COVID-19 recovery guidelines, all dollars will be shown in one line item, specifically other allowable costs, with the exception of what you show as salaries and wages. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to start a new budget. I've chosen my program name for the test program. I'm choosing budgets. I will not copy a previous budget. We'll start the request. And now we have a general ledger worksheet. The first thing I always do is I write down my budget number in case I have problems. That helps to reference it if contacting the help desk or your contract manager. And I see there's two sections to the worksheet, as always, the salaries and accounts, and then the expense accounts. And just to take a preview, the other allowable costs we'll use shortly is down at 880, line 880 at the very bottom. And I want to start with our salaries and our wages. So I'm going to come up here, and in this example, I have just one employee, but you'll do multiple employees exactly the same way. You simply have to make sure that you've added the position and an employee name to the position. And we cover that in a different video. So I'm going to regular salaries and wages. And I see that we have actually in this one, they've set it up with two for me. And I'm going to go to the camp counselor first. And I'm going to set this person up for regular salaries of, let's say, $10,000. Program allocation and the CSC allocation will all be the same across the board in all three columns. I will use the FICA calculation I find in this cell on the rest of the row at 765, 765. And if I needed to do any of these other fringe benefits, I could enter that in here as well. And for virtually all standard budgets in this summer camp, it would be the same value across all three if you're doing that. The exception would be if you have other funders, for example. But in that case, it's a little different, so I want to stick to the basics here. We're going to save the salary detail. That will take me back. In that, I can check this. That looks good. And now I want to go back to position list. I've taken care of my camp counselor at $10,000. Now I'm going to my site manager. I'm going to click that link. And I will come down, and let's say the site manager will be getting $20,000. And when you make a typo, you just go right back again. And I see the FICA is 1530. I'll make that reflect in all three columns. Again, I don't have any fringe benefits. I'm going to save, and then I'll click that back to position list. At this point, let's say that that's all my employees, but it's exactly the same if you have 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever. Just keep going through that series of steps. And now I'm going to, just to make sure that this is right, I'm going to save my narrative. And now I'm going to click back to summary. That takes me back to the general ledger. So I've completed my salaries and wages. I have $32,295 on an allocation of $60,000. So now I want to put in the rest of that amount down in the other allowable costs. So I simply click the other allowable cost line item, 880. That will take me to the worksheet. In this narrative, it's, you want to explain to the KHA finance department why you're doing or showing a certain amount. In this case, because this is a special circumstances, I'm just going to, for training purposes, put COVID-19 recovery guidance. And then I'm going to put in the box below the blue section $27,705, which will bring me up to $60,000 when I add that to the salaries and wages. And I'm going to save expense. And then back to summary. Now I should have a grand total of 60,000, and I do. Okay, so I see the 27,705 in all three columns. That's what I'm looking for. Excuse me. I see the grand total matching my allocation of 60,000. I'm definitely in the right fiscal year, 2020 summer camp, and I've written down my budget ID number. So this one is good to save and then forward. Now, many organizations will assign the same person to both the creator role and the submitter role, and that's how I have this set up. So I'm going to return to the dashboard, excuse me, because I am also the submitter. I'll find the My Approval Queue pod. I'll click the program name for the budget, and I see what we were just working on. But if you're familiar with the SAMUS budget system, you see that it's taken out the unused line items now. And I see my salaries. I see my grand total. I'm going to submit that and click OK. Now, you want to make sure that you receive an email receipt that says that that was submitted. If you don't get that in 5 minutes or so, you might check your spam filter. And if time goes on, you still haven't received it, you want to consider calling your contract manager to see if it's shown up on their side to make sure that there's not some sort of an email problem. If we don't have your current valid email address in the system, you wouldn't receive the receipt, and that could explain sometimes not getting it. But until you receive that email receipt, assume that it has not been submitted correctly to KHA. So in our next step, we're going to see the reimbursements. Okay, so I'd like to show an example of those email receipts. Here we have one showing that the budget was submitted and received, and it allows me to see the program name and the budget ID. I know that KHA got it. There it is. And the other one you want to look for is the approval of your budget. And here we see that this budget was approved, in this case by me, on a date and time. So this is really, until you see this, you cannot assume that your budget has been received and approved. And like I was saying before, check with your contract manager or your spam filter if you're not receiving this. And again, sometimes it could be that we do not have your correct email address in the system. So after receiving those, we're ready to do our reimbursement. So I'm going to go back to Fiscal, My Approval Queue, New Approval Request, going to choose the correct fiscal year. Okay, there's my test program. And this time we're choosing reimbursements in our area. Now, you want to have the correct period start and end date. If you get this wrong, there's no way to edit it. So be certain that you're going to get this right. In this case, I'm going to go with these camp dates. But you could go earlier. You could actually show your period start date to precede your first day of camp. It doesn't stop you from a technical standpoint, and you could go further than your period, but you can't go less than. So if your camp day starts on June 8th and you set this at June 9th, you're going to lose a whole day, and you probably just have to delete it and start all over. So I've got this the way I want it. I'll click Start Request. And we are now in the reimbursement worksheet. And the first thing I'm going to do again, I'm going to write down my reimbursement ID number. There it is, 23033. Okay, now I'm going to take a quick look at this. I see my allocation is what I expect, 60,000. I see my reimbursement period, June 8th through July 24th, is what I intended. And I notice that net adjustments are 0. And I notice that my year-to-date reimbursement and my allocation balance are showing two different figures. The amount owed, the 30,000, that's my advance. And the allocation balance, 60,000, that's my award. If I scroll down, I see regular salaries and wages and FICA. And I also see my other allowable costs. So now I have to go back in, and we're going to start with paying back the advance. I don't want to forget that. I'm going to go up to advances and adjustments and click that button. Now let me state quickly that in order for this to work, you need to be requesting in your reimbursement an amount greater than your advance if you expect to get any money back. So if there's questions about paying the advance back and how much you're requesting, please contact your contract manager. But if it's clear to you what it should be, you come down to outstanding adjustments and you want to choose advance payback. If you ever come in and pay an advance back and there's anything in that drop down for outstanding adjustments other than advance payback, something's wrong. I want you to stop and call or email the SAMIS help desk at samis@coj.net. But if you have advance payback, you choose that, and then you come down and you click the amount to pay back. And then we apply that. Say OK. And I temporarily stopped the video here as we were having some latency. I'm still having the buffering on apply advancement, but the numbers have shown up. I'm going to come down here and say paid in full, if that's the case. And then I'm going to click back to summary. And usually this would have stopped buffering, but I think we just have a little latency in the system. And I'm going to click back to summary. And okay, I had just paused the video to take care of that latency issue. Everything's good now. And when you click back to summary after completing your advance, this is the screen that you get. Adjustments applied to reimbursement. You want to see that to make sure it was applied to the reimbursement. Now to get back to the worksheet, I'm going to choose details. And I see the net adjustment is showing the 30,000. And the year-to-date amount owed is 0. So that tells me I have successfully paid or showed the advance that's being paid back. So I'm done with the advance, and I'm going to come down to regular salaries and wages now. I want to go in here and I'm going to click that line item. And we're going to start by showing how much we paid our site manager and our camp counselor. And we want to make sure that we have documentation that will be accepted by the KHA finance department showing that we actually paid what we're showing in these fields. And when I click in the first field, I see 20,000 was what we had budgeted, and that is what we paid. And then the FICA was 1530. I click in the camp counselor salary field, 10,000. And the FICA 765. Okay. Now we're going to just take a look at everything. Everything else was fine. We didn't use any of these fields. We're going to come down here, and since we did not add any payroll taxes and fringe benefits in this example, I don't need to add a payment. Now I can simply save salary reimbursement. And I'm back on the general ledger. And as you see, that nicely shows 30,000 across in these fields and no remaining balance, or I'm not leaving any dollars on the table for either of these two positions. So I'm done with salaries and wages. Now, it doesn't matter if you have 2 or 20 employees, you would do them all the same way. At this point, I'm going to scroll down and go to my other allowable costs. I'll click that link, and I'm going to begin to set this up with what with what will probably be for most camps, multiple payments here. I've got 3 or 4 that will show as an example, and they'll all add up to $27,705. Now, in reality, you may have a few more than my example, but I don't want to spend all day doing this video making it look that realistic. So I'll add payment. Let's say that I'll start off check number 1, and let's say I start off on June 8th. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pull up my document first, because you have to have documentation. I choose my file, and let's say that we're going to start with our electric bill. EA, so utility bill for June. Now, in reality, you may have 2, one for June and one for July. I'll upload that document. It's there now. I see the one. I'll put a vendor name. I'll just say JEA, $250 was this one. Now I'm done with that row. So remember, we're putting all of our invoices and receipts in this one line item. So now I'm going to add payment again. I get another line. And I'll say this is check 2, and I'll just do that. And let me see what other options I have here on my invoices. I've got an insurance one, so let's put that as $2,500. So I'll say insurance, required insurance, and I'll upload the document. Now that document's there. That was $2,500. I'll get that in both fields. And in almost all cases, you'll always be requesting the CSC reimbursement to be the amount of your check. If you think that should not be the case, please talk to your contract manager. And I'll say State Farm Insurance, and we'll continue. Add payment. And let me see what else I have here. I'm going to do 2 more, but you're getting the idea, I'm sure. Rent. Okay, rent for facility. And that was $1,500. And we'll say that was July 1st. And filter. Okay. Now then, I want to do one more. And I've showed the JEA, insurance, training, and then I'm going to finish it off with our virtual services. Now you won't necessarily have something like this, but I have to, for the sake of saving time, finish this up with something. And my amount will be $23,455. And again, you can put the commas in there if you like. We'll say services. And I'll save payments. Okay, very good. So now then, we basically have completed our reimbursement. So let's review what we have. We paid back our advance at $30,000 on a $60,000 award. We showed our regular salaries and wages for 2 employees, site manager and camp counselor, as we normally would on any SAMIS budget that reflected that from the contract for salaries and wages. That gave us $32,295 across the board. And then for our other allowable costs, everything else. And in that worksheet, we have our utility bill, our insurance cost, our realtor, our virtual services. Again, you're probably going to have a lot more than 4, but you get the idea that you have to have a document for each one of those uploaded. I'm going to go back to the summary, and I'm going to see that the whole thing comes out to very nicely to $60,000 year-to-date request, with $30,000 being paid back. Now, This basically is going to take care of everything. Your match amount, if you have a match amount, you would show it there, but that does not affect the math that's going on up here. You do all of this and you can still have a match amount down here. I would like to read to you, most of you already know this, but for proof of payment for the Kids Hope Alliance Finance Department, bank statements with vendor name and amount paid would be accepted. A copy of a canceled check would be accepted. A copy of the check stub with a bank documented transaction, including the check number, dollar amount, and the date that the check cleared would be accepted. Cash payments will not be reimbursed, and handwritten receipts will not be accepted. So that covers everything from the KHA Finance. I'm going to save this, and we would go through the same process again of forwarding that and then submitting it. And I'll emphasize again, once you submit this, or you think you submitted it, make sure that you get that email, and there it is. And until you see this saying that forwarded document, and then I have one more step to go, and that would be the submission. So let's step through that again. I'll come here and I'll go back to my dashboard. If I'm the person who does both creation and submission, I'll reopen my reimbursement and I'll check that out. If that looks good, I'll certify it and submit it. And then in just a minute, we should see that email come back for the receipt. While I'm waiting, I'll go. There it is. And that tells me that it made it to KHA. Has been submitted. Of course, there's one more thing I want to see, and that's the approval receipt. I'm not going to step through that right now. I just wanted to get you to this point. If you have technical questions, please contact us at samus@coj.net and keep your contract manager copied on any emails you see to us. So we want to thank you for all the great work you're doing, particularly under these challenging times for summer camp, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.